This is Link to the Chain, aka Jihad, and others know me as G from the True and G Show. So during this video, we will be taking a look into the secret societies of science and the rise of the industrial age, in which the world would witness a bunch of new inventions created based on science, which would turn innocent science into a community of capitalism and elite clubs. So before we end with the present, we must first start from the beginning of the science revolution. Of course, many would say I should start off talking about Egypt, aka Kemet, in regards to Imhotep with his breakthroughs in medicine and health. Yet I can only speculate on his conduct and organizations in which he shared his medical secrets with, which would mean I would be doing more guessing and assuming than actual knowing and what actually was going on around those times. But it is fair to say, even before Imhotep, science existed. For the ancients before Egypt, for the continent of Africa is very vast, and yes, very plenty. And I am sure there were more before the civilization of Egypt, dealing with natural science and observations before Imhotep, who were already breaking down matter and reconstructing things using alchemy, as well as first-hand observations, general logic, and utilizing natural senses. Alright, so to speed things up a bit, I would much rather speak on the facts, in which we actually have the dates and times too, for I'm an unbiased historian and researcher. So I would have to start with the England man named Francis Bacon, who lived from 1561 to 1626. Francis Bacon was probably the first observationist who went against the grain and to challenge the Greeks in the modern world. For he is stated saying people should not accept the theories from the Greek philosophers such as Aristotle, Plato, or Socrates, just because most people around the 16th century and previous took the Greek's word to be mostly true on all accounts. So he became one of the first natural, true scientists of the 16th century, who would argue that careful observation and experiments was the key to finding out how the natural world actually works. Again, I'm not saying that the ancient Africans didn't already come to this conclusion, because we can see from their drawings and cultural lifestyles that they did. Alright, conscious community? But when religious dogma reigned supreme, descending from the Greeks on down to the Romans, trickling down to Christianity, and then later on Islam, the Western world would soon see Francis Bacon's method of understanding put into effect like never before. So by the late 17th century, the science of observation and experimentation will become the new approach everywhere in the Western world, starting the divide amongst those who saw natural existence as a living entity and those who saw the universe as a functioning machine. So to follow up with Mr. Bacon, I'm not sure about the stance that he stood, whether it was for spherical or flat earth, but those before him most definitely did take stances. So let's go back a few years to the beginning of the argument of flat earth versus spherical earth. So before Francis Bacon, there was another astronomer of the 16th century by the name of Tycho Brahe. Yeah, it's like saying brah or bruh. Anyhow, who lived from 1546 to 1601, who has been verified and stamped in the science world for his accurate observations of the positioning of the stars. So he was dead on with that, and was openly in a disagreement with the Copernican theory. Instead, he believed that the sun revolved around the earth, like most flat earthers do today. But unlike the flat earthers of the day, He also believed that the other planets, other than the Earth, revolved around the sun. So before we continue to move forward, let's go back to the 2nd century AD. Flat earthers definitely should know this astronomer for sure, by name. And if they don't, well, Ptolemy was the first on wax to go public in the New World to state that the Earth is at the center of the universe, and that the Sun and all other planets and stars orbit around the Earth. So now, jumping back into the 16th century, the shift from flat to spherical really didn't go global until a Polish clergyman, and there, before I call out his name, let's first take a look at what the definition of clergyman is first. A clergyman is a man who is a member of the clergy, especially in a Christian church. That is the actual definition, okay? So now that I got that out the way, the 15th century and first on wax to go global was Nicholas Copernicus, who lived from 1473 through 1543, and who was backed by the Roman Catholic Church, keep that in mind, during his time of Reformation, which was under siege by powerful monarchs, satriarchal writers, and humanist philosophers, along with Protestant reformers or Protestants, the religious group. Anyhow, Jesuits, Freemasons, all within the Christian world was an immense change. This was also in the times of Christopher Columbus, the navigator who Copernicus informed that the world was a sphere, who so-called discovered the Americas while people were already there living on the continent. Anyhow, Copernicus would create the platform for the expanding Western world, who will go on to claim that the Earth and all the other planets orbit the Sun. However, this theory of his would not be published until Copernicus was close to his death, maybe more so until the church had completely reformed and converted to where it was safe to do so. Created in 1440, this tool would become the first propaganda tool used before the invention of the radio and television, which was the printing press. Excuse me, printing press. So, Copernicus would be the first major scientist to publish his works, which made his theories more accessible and utilized as a reference or source, which a lot of people like to always go to. Where's your source? For others to come up after him. Now, entering into the 16th century, another astronomer by the name of Johannes Kepler, who lived from 1571 through 1630, who majored in the study of optics, would come along and piggyback off of Hans Lippershey, the German-Dutch spectacle maker, and credited for the invention of the actual telescope, as well as Nicholas Copernicus, and would also lay out the claims that the planets move in circles as they orbit the sun in ellipses, moving faster in various speeds as they approach the sun. Kepler would also take advantage of the printing press. Of course, Kepler too would go on to publish his notes in regards to his views on the laws of planetary motion in 1609, thus making more sources. So basically, within this time frame of the 15th century to the 18th century, the church was finding itself in odds within itself. So as science begun to grow widespread, the so-called Word of God was also being revised, starting with King Henry VIII of the 15th century on down to King James. You know, you guys love him. King James, and I'm pretty sure he loves you guys back all the way. Anyhow, all jokes aside, King James of the 16th century. So by the 18th century, the King James Version of the Bible became the authorized book of the world and unchallenged, just like the Copernican global model. So here where we will take a look at some of the Bible verses I have personally picked out of this big black book that a lot of Christians and others who read this Bible have equated to the earth being a dome or even the center of the universe. Not saying they're wrong, not saying they're right, but let's take a look, shall we? Genesis chapter 1, verse 9. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. Verse 10. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. Let's go take a look at verse 14. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Verse 15. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. Verse 16. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He also made the stars. Verse 17. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. Verse 18. And to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. Let's go into Psalms chapter 19, verse 1. The heavens declared the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Psalms 93, verse 1. Thou hast fixed the earth immovable and firm. Psalms chapter 96, verse 10. He has fixed the earth firm, immovable. Psalms 104, verse 5. Thou didst fix the earth on its foundation so that it never can be shaken. And let's take one last look at 1 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 30. He has fixed the earth firm, immovable. So there, for the most part, I'm pretty sure those are the verses that Christians who subscribe to the flat earth or even the dome or we're the center of the universe That just might be what they use when they speak about flat earth. But those like myself, who are not a flat earther nor a spherical earther, would just say, fuck all the books. What does my logic and reason tell me? And I'm going to tell you, it tells me that the world that we live on is nothing like what we have been told, nor have stared at inside of history and science class in regards to that dusty ass globe. Tilted on a stand, that's for sure. Anybody can walk up to that ball, put their hands on it in class, and I guarantee you they'll have dust on all 10 fingers in both palms. Guaranteed. So now, for anybody to just accept Copernicus' theory without paying attention to the observations of Ptolemy's claims before Copernicus or even the Bible was in existence, that would be absolutely absurd. And those that are watching this video must know that Ptolemy was not a Christian, and neither am I, for the Bible was not around in his times, and in no shape, form, or fashion does the Bible play a role in minds. So keeping that in mind and focusing back on Ptolemy, Ptolemy became one of the kings, aka Pharaoh, of Egypt after the death of Alexander. So one must come to also note that everything he learned and taught was done in Egypt. So for all of those in the conscious community that want to keep on saying that the flat earth was a Bible creation, well, you're wrong. But Ptolemy was heavily schooled in the Egyptian sciences and maths. So whether he plagiarized the ancients' knowledge and teachings, he wrote them down for himself. He damn sure agreed with them when he didn't have to, and would go on to die with the claims of the earth is at the center of the universe, and everything from the sun, moon, stars, and planets circle around us. Long before the debate of flat earth versus round earth. Now, continuing on, science would change drastically once the first mega superstar would come around by the name of Galileo. Born on February 15th, 1564 in Pisa, Italy, Galileo Galilei was a mathematics professor who made pioneering heliocentric observations of nature with long-lasting implications for the study of physics. Galileo would also go on to construct a telescope of his own and would go on to validate the Copernican theory, which supported a sun-centered solar system, and everything in our galaxy is drawn to its light. Galileo's observations was based on him pointing his telescope towards the moon and observing the sphere shape of its dimensions, as well as the circular shape of the sun, begin to do mathematical equations and equate his views to those satellites in suggesting the earth must also be a sphere. In regards to the Bible verses, Matthew chapter 6 verse 10, set the world right, do what's as above, so below. And depending on what version you Bible thumpers out there read, it also might read like this: your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth that is in heaven, so above is below. Galileo was stressed in his views of earth, which he would later on be accused of heresy twice by the church for his beliefs, and before his death, he would write 2 books on his ideas, again adding more sources. He died in Arcetri, Italy, of course, on January 8th, 1642. And before I go on, a lot of people find themselves today, they look up at the moon and they see a sphere. They look up at the sun, they see a circle and a big ball of light. And they equate what they see up in the heavens as what must be down here on earth. So they say the earth is a globe. But it doesn't work like that. You see, if you play any sports, yes, we use balls to play sports, but the platform that the sports is played on is always flat. We got to keep that in mind. Please do. If you didn't, now you know. Anyhow, so many ideas and views about our planet or planet would arise from different viewpoints out of the Bible, spherical earth as well as the flat earth. Only thing different is that before the world was considered to be a globe, the world view was already set on a stationary flat earth. Yet another power player in the creation of the scientific community would rise. Sir Isaac Newton, born in 1643 through 1727. Yet by this time, the scientific revolution was already in full force, and he, like many others to come after him, would also follow in the Galilean and Copernicus theory. But he would be the one to revolutionize the heliocentric model by attempting to piece together how the solar system and a heliocentric model works, thus introducing the word everybody gravitates to now. Yes, point intended. Newton would publish his most acclaimed work, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. Get it? In which the legends has it, he witnessed a apple falling on him, or perhaps right next to him, that gave him the ideal of the iconic word we use today whenever we speak about whatever we cannot explain on Earth or outside of it: gravity. So, as science grew and the newfound discoveries would become plenty and many after the death of Galileo, the name scientist would be coined by William Whewell, or William Whewell, in 1834, and so by the 19th century, the scientific community would be set up free from the church altogether, but based on views of Galileo, who idolized Copernicus and his world view. This foundation would lead everybody, and I do mean everybody, who would come up after Galileo Galilei to base their studies on the heliocentric model. And so, after this foundation was set up, anybody who would disagree with the Copernican model and globe would be ignored or ridiculed by their peers for even talking about a flat plane or stationary Earth, or a solar system that does not rotate around the sun. So, by the turn of the 19th century, the Don King of the scientific community would rise up, stamping that dynamic word called gravity with his theory of relativity. Yes, yes, yes. Albert Einstein, born in 1879 through 1955, the longtime philosopher turned physicist, gained worldwide attention within the scientific community by winning the Nobel Peace Prize in 1921 for his mathematical philosophy, E equals mc squared. Quick breakdown: Einstein did nothing more than any of his past peers except add more confusion and long drawn out math problems, all based in theory. Don't believe me? Well, research his career for yourself. But while you do that, let's take a look at some of his noblest accomplishments. Theoretical physics, theory of relativity, quantum theory, particle theory, photon theory. All of these were theories, and so on. Basically was the Jesus Christ to gravity by applying all these theories to the universe in which modern science gravitates to now. Again, point intended. So, one must also keep in mind to reflect that Albert Einstein was one of Adolf Hitler's scientists in Germany before the United States put his theories and studies to work on the atom bomb, the Manhattan Project, and of course nuclear fission, which is a whole nother discussion within itself. Somebody else can go do a video on all of that good shit if they want to. So, not to take anything away from the work and builds of Einstein, America's genius, but it was because of the secret societies within the scientific community, along with their egos, the realest scientist of the 19th century rarely gets any publicity. Yes, of course, none other than Nikola Tesla, born in 1856 and died in 1943. Tesla was actually an inventor, an electrical engineer, as well as a mechanical engineer. His expertise was in alternating currents, high voltage, high frequency power experiments. Tesla also introduced the modern world to the rotating magnetic field, induction motor, radio remote control vehicle, and the Tesla coil, which is everywhere. Not to mention those drones that everybody's flying around. You can pretty much thank Tesla for that shit too. Not really too sure on his stance whether he believed the world to be spherical or flat, or even if he cared. Yet, one thing is for certain: he understood enough to understand so that we may overstand our Earth is electromagnetic, and that everybody could receive free energy for eternity. And so he began working on a tower project called Wandercliff, which was supposed to be an intercontinental wireless communication and power transmitter. Only thing is, Before he could finish, he ran out of money and could not find any backers to fund him. But why would any government fund a person who is trying to give away something that they make money off of for free? So Tesla fell back and continued his experiments wherever he would lay his head, mostly inside random hotels in New York. Strange thing about it all, Tesla was coined the mad scientist because he went against the grain. Yet Einstein always referred to Tesla as being the real genius, and they call Einstein the genius. What an oxymoron. And to be truthful, Tesla may even be the reason we live so easy today in regards to anything electrical, because after his death, most of his patents were seized by the United States, and I'm sure other countries as well. For Tesla on record have 278 known patents issued throughout 26 countries, yet 22 patents out of his known 300 patents worldwide cannot be accounted for, which might even be CERN, Project Bluebeam, HARP, and a list of others perhaps. Who knows? Which leads me to my last scientist I will briefly touch on. Not too many people out there in the world know too much about this scientist, so let me shed some light on Mr. von Braun. Born in 1912 through 1977, von Braun, like Einstein, was a member of Nazi Germany, secretly moved to the United States as part of some sort of 1,500 German scientists. Yet Mr. Braun was a rocket engineer who was at the genesis of NASA, serving as the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center and chief architect of the Saturn V launch vehicle that is allegedly propelled the Apollo spacecraft to the moon. You probably heard that story. Von Braun was also a longtime friend of Mr. Walt Disney, who also from speculation was one of the original funders of NASA, as well as a well-known Mason. And it may just be through this partnership America's media and President Kennedy began talking about sending a man to the moon. Because two science fiction films produced by Walt Disney and von Braun in the 1950s called Destination to the Moon and Rocket Rip XM that captured the imagination of the United States citizens. Look it up. So by 1952, von Braun published his concept of a manned space station in a weekly magazine article called Collier's, titled Man Will Conquer Space Soon, which artists began to draw his concepts, further feeding the ideas of man on the moon and traveling through space. Von Braun would also come in contact with the German science writer Willy Ley, who would also publish his concepts again, pushing the urge for the American public to travel the universe. So now, with all that said, what do we really know? Because the rabbit hole continues to get deeper and steeper. But hey, one thing is for sure, our government is not keeping it 100 with us. For one, about the shape of the world we live on, and two, what the hell are they hiding? And three, why? But I guess as a flat earth versus spherical earth continues to grow in the coming years, some charismatic investigator, explorer will uncover more of the pieces to this puzzle, while the world continues to sit quietly as they send their kids to school to look at that mysterious ball on its stand, and when asked how does it work, all they're going to hear is gravity.